What does a day have so in common that we believe we are in one? What does a community, what does a country have so in common we might like to think we are living in one? What does a genre have so in common that we tell ourselves, our parents, our publishers, possibly even our therapist this morning, that we are writing in one? These are the questions that have been keeping me up at night during such an overtly divisive time, during such a mendacious and menacing presidency, and are a part of what compels and inspires me to host tonight's event. Not that those questions will be answered by any means or be reduced to oneness, but that the questions will be lived, as Rilke once sort of said. Boston Originals is a series that celebrates some of the most vital work emerging in the greater Boston region. I started the series to recognize, archive, and give voice to the diversity and urgency of the work I began to encounter at reading series and in journals that are published or hosted by many of the people in the audience tonight. Boston is a community constituted of both transience and durability, influx and efflux, as Whitman would say. And while no single event can ever represent the totality, manyness, commotion, and boldness that is Boston and Boston area poetics, I hope this series honors the spectrum of aesthetic, experiential, political, and/or metaphysical possibilities in our midst. We've got 8 remarkable readers tonight, a very brief intermission, as brief as we can make it, in which to commune with each other and to buy books. Some are for free, some are negotiable, some are, you can barter. And afterwards, there's a protest at the Harvard Square Tea Stop against the revised travel ban, and that supposedly goes through 8:30. I suspect that's a open parentheses at the end, so if we wanted to mosey over there, should your conscience tell you to do that. Conscience, both things, same. For now, please welcome our first set of readers, Oni Buchanan, Jim Dunn, Boyd Nielson, and Natalie Shapero, who will read in that order. If people want to sit up front, there are seats. Oni Buchanan. Cool.
Thanks everyone for coming, and Christina, thank you so much for everything you do. This is amazing. I'm just going to read all new work. Relatively new in the last few years. So the first poem is called Not to Half-Ass It. The demands of not half-assing this one thing are more stringent than simply half-assing 99% of all the other things. The price tag not to half-ass it is near unbearable. The price tag not to half-ass it is objectively unreasonable. What's a reasonable demand to ask of oneself when you compare the amount to other amounts, when you make a mortal ratio of numbers? The economics are not on a human scale. The extremity of it means, in a way, we've reached the terminal point of a perception of how things are supposed to play out, because to survive oneself at this late hour, overexposed into blackness, image obliterated, committed to the instinct of renunciation, the drive to efface the distinction between self and environment, the disowned theory of mimicry. Because if you were smart the whole way, being shuttled along this excruciating tunnel the whole way, you were looking for a little janitorial doorway leading elsewhere, leading to a room with a party piñata and people half-assing the beating down of some representational animal, some stubbornly metaphorical animal, to achieve a low-quality leak of generic drugstore candy. Thanks, Ruth. Shout out. Okay. Free market value. I've got to do something middle of the road to counterbalance, to counteract this, place an online order for a terry cloth bathrobe, place an online order for a piece of TSA compliant luggage, for a gift basket to thank the neighbors for maintaining their own piece of property that overlooks our property, for not continuing to let it look like a huge trash heap. Thanks for that. What, if anything, increases the free market value of this property? We heard a near bird this morning, so near, we thought in unison, tracked like a series of bleats from a clown horn. The pay here isn't fair, and we're all trapped inside the hovel, sweeping it out as best we can. Please give us a reasonable 300-piece puzzle that we might calm ourselves with some achievement. Or we could bake snickerdoodles. A pizza slice could be the apex of our day. We could take a painting class with a bunch of ladies, all of us in our smocks, accidentally getting paint on our hands. Whoops, why yes, I took a painting class last evening. I took a serious beating. I mean, we painted ships in the harbor at sunset. We copied stroke for stroke the heavy brushstrokes of our capable instructor. Here's what we deny ourselves, and here's what we deny each other. Distant belovedness. I've deflected that love on our behalf and descended to the subterranean depths to build a machine whose engine turns over once every half decade. A true champion will emerge from the rubble of my involuntary ambitions. The belovedness cries in from a cosmic distance, balanced on a single nail jutting up from the bloated timbers of the sunken vessel, balanced on the compass needle, splintered from the center of the earth, an underwater feast of celebration, a send-off, a homecoming, a prodigal return. The garden path of pollarded mulberry, all the reaching arms chopped off at the elbow, the prayer site knotted and bulging at the wound, the variations were drawn out to the exhaustive end of options, carbon copies, unabridged inclusiveness, and flat sincerity in air. I was here for an instant. I recognize myself for an instant. This is almost what it feels like, what it used to feel like to be me. This is almost what it feels like to remember, what it felt like to remember being me. So if I touched base, so many months charted to cold, they fall under the cold header, are shuttled to the column. I wake up each morning to the billowing of oil heat in April. So if I touched base with my feelings, a dog barks incessantly in the yard. He sings only 3 notes, but let's be honest, that's remarkable for a dog. It's a scalar descent, mi, re, do. At least he returns to the tonic rather than leave all of us hanging, the heaviest among us going first. Mi, redo. I'm not sure I want to get used to this. So far, 2 gigantic carpenter bees inexplicably dead on the steps. Is it so serene? So if I touched base with my feelings, even to figure out how the hell I got here, pardon me, it will just take me a moment, not scattershot, not a spill, but delectable and ripe like halo oranges, that exemplar of a genius stroke of marketing, the orange-colored net bag to make the oranges look irresistibly luscious, to make them orange after all. Last night in darkness, a bat flew an inch above my face as I lay face up in bed. Now it's Friday, and I deserve a coffee for this day, for reaching it alive. I will go on a sunny stroll and find some fresh brewed coffee at a place that's not Dunkies. I knew inevitably the day would come when I called Dunkin' Donuts Dunkies, unironically. So if I touched base with my feelings, One fall, John and I we spent like 24 hours going to 3 fall festivals in a row, and we went to a blacksmithing festival, followed by the Johnny Appleseed Festival, followed by the generic fall festival, which it had a trebuchet at it, like a medieval slingshot, and people were piling pumpkins in the back and just flinging them across the field. That was the festival. I don't know where you rent one of those. Is that like a industry, you know? My trebuchet is cheaper than... Anyway, temperature window. This is inspired by the blacksmithing festival, temperature window. The hammer has a memory. The hammer returns to where its stroke began. It rebounds to the head of the stroke, primed for another, just muscle memory, just pure physics, the material instinct of action and reaction contained in the same cell of non-thought. If you don't know an answer, do your research and become an expert in the answer. Pain, the most rigorous of educators, a kind of unkind information, a tethered wire trapped with pins, the body under X tons of pressure, all its wound ligaments, a hair shy of the breaking point. This is where the hammer strikes the site, where the music rises off, now audible, wrought iron twisted, scrolled in increment, Baroque ornament, the sound decaying, the temperature window closing. Yes, a striation and stress window too, to some degree, but it's the temperature, the essential piece of change, the yellow-orange stage, past red hot, but not quite white. That's forging heat, a window. For a finite number of strokes, you have to know the timing in advance, anticipate, because the instance of a strike is only healed by 25 occasions. It's hard to live by those odds, but concentrate on the curve, on the desire to create a curve. One stroke with full intention along the waist of an anvil, one stroke along the horn. Circuit breaker. Did that voltage surge set off the breaker, switch the latch? Thank the Lord, it saved us. I do love a good electrical circuit breaker, don't you? Otherwise, the gutted, charred-out mansion by the pulverizing ocean, the annihilating ocean, you inhabit one, I haunt the other. Life could have suddenly been a lot more different than where we find ourselves. Me here talking to you right now, the detonating ocean, the demolishing ocean, disfiguring by force or by erosion, because circuit breakers are on the right side of casual, like a quality pair of almond-colored slacks, the privilege of nonchalance, of tercets. Sure, yes, I won't batter you so obviously on the bruising surface. Let's dig deep to the watery grave. Yeah, that's your tears, my dear. That's your chamber, while above the muting surface, your beautiful burning friend loops the Beethoven coda again and again, looking for the smoke-filled exit. I sent Poseidon with his trident to my former ticketed location, velvet on the marble floor, his gentle hands unfolding a smoldering concert program, ashen embers like sheaves of scaling slate. Sublimate, I could say. I am sublime. I am dematerialized. Should I pursue this conversation further, calorify the value of some number of my numb achievements? Thank the Lord, I am ready to lay my body down across the channel, the electrical cable stretched between the continental plates, transmit the expired signal, some outdated SOS. Oh, was she that old? She didn't look her age. Wow, she didn't look it. Two more. How heavy? What would be a necessary shift? What would enable you? What would need to move? How heavy would it be? How intricate? How laced fine and sinewy the filigree woven deeply to the core? How painful would it be? How painful not to move that heavy stone weighing down your heart, weighing down my heart. I move the stone. It is heavy. I do not move the stone. It is heavy. I do not want to cause you any pain, beautiful creature, most extravagant creature. Last one. This valuable item. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate it. This valuable item. What a merchant's mouth was saying, a legal pad for a mouth, a trespass, severed cables spewing from the hacked-off shoulder, the blast furnace forging golden tokens by regular, I mean maintained, by astonished, I mean greatly disappointed, the intricate, intoxicating wrappers pressed and saved. I arrived late to my own christening, but thank God, not too late. Wooden birds nailed to the dry bird bath, my marigold in a half-pint milk carton cut with rounded scissors, my orphan marigold offered but depleted but dizzying in fragrance, my punctilious marigold hallucinating in its bursting, my shivering perfunctory marigold. I'm dehydrated, but thank God this valuable item will make me well again. These colors drained out will heal me. Aromatic essence captured from the lingering mists of Bhutan. You called me back. You wrote me back on fine linen letterhead. Your missive arrived. You responded to my inquiry. You liked my posting in the local circular. You said, I hear you. I love what you're saying to me right now. I love what you're saying.
Thank you, Ernie. That was beautiful. And it's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Christina. And thank you all for coming. And it's really an honor and pleasure. So let's get to it. Lately, I think we've all been feeling fresh out, just empty, you know. So this poem is called Fresh Out. Fresh Out. Language trails spiral in cool tornadoes of swirling speech. I wish I had some to give you, but I am fresh out. I wish I had sleep to give you. I am fresh out of my mind. Empty veils make dreamy curtains. Sunlight, buckshot ray blast out of the clouds, lost signs of ghost children wrestling the breeze. Some details are worth washing ashore, etched in sand in the battered wind. A grammatic acrobat, I'm not. A tenuous tightrope walker in my eternal fall, dancing on the rumbling air of delirious, furious thunder. Salient salesmen hurdling numbers, buttered bathers glistening in the golden light. Dead soldiers unbottling ferocious last wishes. That's a given. Venus in transit. But occasionally, at her inferior injunction, Venus passes directly across the disk of the sun, the phenomenon being known as a transit. The Sun by Young is quoted in Harry Crosby's Transit of Venus. The first light of morning slants across the trees from the steamy shower window after days of unending rain. A line of sparrows sit on the ruins of a fallen rod from a makeshift hothouse. A folded dollar this day hidden in the crevice of a secret window in hopes that a youngster finds and divines its provenance. 6 in the morning on 6/6 on this, the longest day. The commuters salute on this elevated platform, sun unblemished overriding the morning. After the transit of Venus 12 hours before 6 on 6/6/12. A small black dot moving across the fiery face of the sun. Clouds that shrouded the journey now succumb to the sun, blazing proud without filter or shroud. Next train to Boston approaching in 6 minutes. As luck would have it, the decorated day is dotted with sixes and shadows from the dance of the train as it arrives in a cloud. I write poems for friends, too, so this is called Lunar Delight for Amanda. You knitted the moon and left a trail of wool across the night harbor waters all the way home. The untold joy and pain swirled in the clouds surrounding your face in lunar delight, barroom blues Monday night. A needled moon across the darkness of noon. Comfortable shoes for Andrew. When dark days arrive, unexpectedly, strap on comfortable shoes and walk a Philly mile. Praise the man, ruddy face, flames shooting and curls from his head, gentle destruction in his smoldering eyes, who sounds like he is falling down every time he gets up. Twilight will bring rose-colored skies and cool reason to restless questions. Native solitude for Patrick on 11/11. Only once over the years, on the day of repeating 11s, we ran into each other in the heart of Ravenswood, not far from the weathered plaque marking the site of the hermit's hut, with dogs and children dancing in different directions along the path. Trailing off, well met, we went our separate ways between the silent boulders. Only the dogs look back in a final glance farewell. You own a native solitude that walks beside you, leashed to your lonely dreams, collared to the crime of your own making. I'm writing this for friends. I don't think that would be for an enemy. He's a really good friend. This is for Henry. Madness to music. You got a lot of friends. I have friends, and I have a couple enemies too. And I got a lot of poems for friends. Madness to music. For Henry. I admire your marriage of madness to music, of thought to vision, of words to sound, of ghost to landscape. You say you will do something, you get it done. There's poetry in that, from your fireside friends to your pillbox hat. And I have a 5A, 5C, 5B. Different timetables for Derek. We are on different timetables with a lot on our plate. There's magic in the carpet, no direction home, erection of moments and monuments. Behind the Lowell Sun sign, there's a mad laughing man repeating the past in participles, championing the moment with obvious obsessions and continual conjurings of dark spaces with light traces of pure pavement. Seedy thoughts for Ryan. Stilted on a hill, that's where we are. Dandelions surrender seedy thoughts blown bald in the breeze, and there is really no reason why we shouldn't care. I'm going fast. This is fairly new. Dogs were killed in the filming of this movie. They were wrinkled with time and sniffing around. All my poems are this simple, really. I'm a kind man with a big heart of Golden's brown mustard. Apply it liberally to your fears, twist it into a pretzel of salted tears. Cover yourself in the condiments of night, an insecurity blanket of Russian undressing. Awake to find the morning bathed in a brilliant butter from Race Chasm's rocky coast, an eponym shrouded in mystery. We're not sure where the name Rafe comes from, but it's actually a chasm on the coast. The wrinkled dog dutifully follows at dawn and blends into the chiseled, rocky brown copper landscape with his sandy skin, beautiful brown horse coat. One fisherman on the lower rocks sits with the ghosts of the two who were swept away to sea by a rogue wave. As they fished upon the mesa of rock that forms the lower tier, the sea swelled and Rafe watched from his widening chasm, whispering to the sea, "The name is Ralph, not Rafe." I've been thinking a lot about Prince and elevators lately, and death. And I ride elevators a lot. So, punch a higher floor. Punch a higher floor if the elevator tries to bring you down before the Grim Reaper comes knocking on your door. So much time in a box, vertically challenging the gravity of the situation, pushing buttons, lighting up floors, preventing doors from closing, traveling onward and upward towards heaven, but stopping on the 19th floor. The stairs are always there for you when you want to work harder at fighting the inevitable levels. The 13th floor is there for you. It's not hidden in another name or number. There is no psychological term for this fear. In a box, said Olson, I set out upon the sea. In this box, I stand upon the swirling shaft of air, rising and falling with the swoosh of descent, or climbing of time upon the cloudy vines. Prince slumped down as he rose in that which he feared would kill him, and it did. Imagine arguments with panthers. This is for Garrett's cat Hector, and everyone is a different poem in a way of a cat's reaction to the night. 18 different sounds, the language of your sandpaper tongue against your soft white belly. Help me in this ocean of distress. Fade into my opal corridors. Birds, words that bristle my whiskered face with a desire to pray. Familiar, recognizing spirits in the stuttering night. Dole out your repetitive rewards. Let me hum under the morning tents a black spoon of fur. Chase my sorrows into shadows. I am a howling piece of furniture, collar of leather, chain of gold. Death is electricity humming my bones. A face in the window, hissing sisters pinning back their ears. Sun, my token to the unseen wilderness. Imagined arguments with panthers, a meek insistence tenderly phrased. Loneliness shedding its coat in the boredom, chin resting upon a tomb of words, dead bricks, so-called ballerinas. Jelly donut. I am a jelly donut. Today, I am not an American nor a citizen of the world. Today, I am a man divided. Today, I am a man multiplied. Today, I am a jelly donut. A city multiplied is the reciprocal of a man divided equal to the square root of infinity's trees. Today, I am a jelly donut. A city divided multiplied by a man who carries the one is less than equality. A man divided multiplied by the city over the one is greater than insanity. Yesterday I was a cup of coffee. Tomorrow I shall be toast. Yesterday I was a zebra prison. Tomorrow I shall be a well-dressed lunch. Today I am a man multiplied. Today I am a city divided. Today I am a jelly donut. The silence of brotherly love for C.A. In memory of my failings, you sit like a bruised Buddha in the company of strange strings plucked on an invisible violin. In the crimson silence, true quiet is cut from the crazy cloth of eternal listening. It doesn't exist in the world today. You, emerald crystal ball, telling the future to fuck off. We have what we need in these immediate mediations. Sharing dazzling chocolate in the green room coated with the crushed flowers of verdant hills. There's nothing but forbidden fauna. Nothing between us but the silence of brotherly love, broken into holy pieces of Acapulco chocolate. Nothing but foggy flowers withered in the words, not spoken between us. What to make of this curious green colt in the crimson compound? A wholesale soldier in the service of your disarming charm and enthusiastic kindness. But now you run with the cherished in another meadow, flying in a feathery missing man formation. Affirmation of the firm grip of gravity. Green demon dragon breathing the fires of poetry under Dickinson's desk and Emerson's nose. Burning a path no one dare follow. Beyond burning bridges, the black sun crinkles the sky. Man, there's nothing but slumbering embers floating in the dreams. The heavenly throng climb that bridge before beholding its random majesty. Ashes, ashes, we all forge ahead. And, I think I'll end it with one more. A punch is a poem. A punch is a poem written in distress, with the rhythm of violence and the beauty of brutal beating. The white light of pain flashes angels in waiting, falling from the aftershock of consciousness lost. The lightning crack of a fist is a sonnet written with bruised knuckles. The head snaps back in slow motion as the music of muscles plays on the pipes of a disfigured dream. A punch is a poem in protest unwritten, a shout caught in your shoe. A hemorrhage of sad stars, a Roman candle of despair going off in your hands. A poem is a gob of spit armed with a hammer, ramming the sky with 1,000 evil anvils. A punch is an apology delivered in a pipe bomb. A poem is hope returned for insufficient postage. A poem is a punch gunning for God, hoping to land square on the jaw. Thank you. Thanks for coming. Thank you very much.
So first of all, I'm really pleased to be reading with the readers here tonight, and thank you to Christina, and thank you all just for sort of taking part in this very fragile endeavor we call poetry. I've got some chaps over there, the garish-looking ones called Division of Light, that I put together as a kind of response to the dark moments I've been feeling recently. They're free, so feel free to grab them. I'm not going to read from them. I'm going to read from some other stuff. I'm going to start with a selection actually from a book that I dedicated to Christina called Buenaventura. This section is called The Ocean. The ocean was blinding light. At noon, the seabirds could be seen recreating the reflection of the moon. Circling. Halogen rooms sputter in earshot of private companies making money off the boon of prisoners' suffering, because vomit once spilled goes everywhere, and a crack of every glass shard held, not at all unlike the crimes of banks or subprime loans crushed between the knees of anthropogenic summer lightning. When the power grid fails, bitterness will seem confusing, because what is the IMF doing when it promotes stable growth and frogs die, butterflies, bees gnawing on untrust, believing in something so potent that you bite down hard and hold, even afterwards, disillusionment, in not understanding maneuver suicidal phone calls to the point you walk on them, or crawl on them, or fall on them, because you wouldn't even know where to start without this, or without you, where to end. Claptrap is about as far as their habits of speech went, undisturbed, free from any mark of suffering or injustice, as if thought were not recalcitrant, as they believed it was not. Construe this how you will. Not enough to live on, not enough to die on. Funeral expenses, cathect purple body once loved or still loved, violent capsicum, and if you want to see pity engorged in straps, taunted in froth and pointless enthrallment, an eyelash fluttering to earth, the pendulum, UI9, all the pomp of being ignorant to have a thought for the bill collector who knows your name, and if these dead fingers were my own, into what kind of havoc would I have them thrown, dreaming to pull away from my body, when fewer days I don't hate my dreams of falling through the ground, a mouthful of earth, but imagine, if you can, the very body that is you, impossibly dead like a trace of breath, over there somewhere, in corner or distant wind, just a bill for the makeup on your stiff skin, which wages pay for because they are the dead living, and only in a fantasy can you imagine yourself out of them, a blue lip or a fold of skin, untruth curved in the gurgle arc spit truth. The meadows slope down along the river, ambling in infinity to the ocean. Mixed feelings, contradictions, unfinished emotion. It is only through these that upliftedness falls. I strain to hear what I'm talking about, or why it matters. The sky and sloping shorelines. It is enough to know that nothing is coming back, that resting on what is over only means worse on the way. Home gets displaced by the defibrillator. Language gets lost in a hole, divorced from the present, unable or truly refusing to declare it was worth it. Many lives overlap in the fantasy of saying that once. All right, so I'm going to read from a section of a book called Dehiscence, which was a title suggested by a friend of mine. And dehiscence, for those of you who don't know, is both a sort of natural process, like a plant sort of flowering or breaking at certain seams, but also a medical term for a wound that's already been sutured and healed over, breaking open again. There was a field, pasture, tilted meadow. We watched from polluted darkness in holes, tunnels, passageways. They grew fat in our hunger. We watched them give speeches on what we were living, barely living through. We heard them accept applause. We saw their palatial indignation. We did not want or need their permission, but with fire, with refineries, with subtle entrapments, they sang of hunger, of how it was made, where it went. We knew these songs and our hatred of them. They would say, "What's the problem? You don't think we didn't mean it, do you, Boyd?" Sea, uncontrollable, untamed on a beach where great cetaceans could be seen at a spot was only fate, and the blue sky transfixed by gore. Awful claws laced hidden prey, and cries erupted from everywhere, intractable enmity. A few went on to piss themselves. Capital burned through all eyes. This is a mere attempt to speak pornographically, freely, against all rats. Out of libraries, we crawled and were called. Putrescence of committees, bowels eviscerated and muted wind, howling scarecrows at the gates. We sucked the slime of disjecta membra. We dragged ourselves from beach to forlorn beach, encrusted, electronegative mauve spittle. We carried agonies of ice and products of divergence across the deadly surface of just this rotted nonsense. The building stayed and barely defined anything. Lunar years of exploitation, perhaps. Vision came without anything, no guarantees, no months ahead, no sense of the risks taken or to be taken. Social realism, these solar flares, Chancellor, starred drugs of vomit and release, mirror of venereal locks. Expect illusions, and these illusions will emit waves of recalcitrant decay, split only by razors gone too far, pockets of flesh torn from hazy codes, distinguished by broken bits of storm held off in the lee. Expect blood, and blood will redden with refusal furiously. Despondence of pus, we were our slightest parts, sickest radiance of sores. Landscapes exploded in a backward glance of necromancy, the wrong pockmarked words begotten by a long, carefully torn dawn, divisive and wanton. We accepted our stupidity, our ugly attitudes, our diarrhea and pulses of fever just to swallow our tongues, cloudy eyes rolling back, some of the garbage they had left behind because it was recognizable, too recognizable, eerily foreign. The image of ourselves were always cracked, mouths foul and rotten with anguish, feathers strewn everywhere like some awful ministration. Did you see it tearing through the air there where our legs buckled and we were left to say one word after another? The equation was deeper, never trying to see the eclipsed sun, never refusing anything but oil, never listening to sounds of twisted metal. The projection of our gilded growl spread fast where the illustrious impatience of being spun beyond its mooring, evasions into catalase of hyssop. At the filth of the deep dive above, high in the sightline's desperate drop of dark archive, the abandonment, the cursed deletion, the want left turning in the wind, aching shame, subservience, hunger, and the pittance that ends it. Eyes sunk, we saw ourselves in a scream of glass, mirror of metal, the latter bringing us to the fine edge of the sharpening stone. A desert of nakedness and rock, decrepit fence for our crumbling walk, suffering lower than any indignation's full sail. High finance, the truth of debt, is a janitor's expectoration of bile. Had we not seen too many scandals flap in the wind, eyes would burst in the pressure of bleach. Non-existence reek of administrators is best practice. By what is stolen, we became our stench. In the extreme cruelty of no saliva, the silence of light dividing alibis of indifference, the work of thought demands this much, who are left to look in now from the outside. Disjointed limbs, cartouche of failures, ravages of Lebanon cedar, endowments and trusts, foregrounded by carcasses. We gagged and coughed our stomachs from our throats, so dependent on the nothings of admeasurements that never arrive except in febrile dreams. Our complicities and repulsiveness slipped into the well, the edge's geometry, into the lake bed that drowned us in its being, looked sideways again, this time to catch sight of our perpendicular fall. The atrocious rebellion of bloody hands, signs of discharge and agony that led to slaughter in the warehouses of bucolic phosphorescence. No one needed to tell us why the stars were now blanks, or how long we would stay alive in broken perseverance. When locks failed, they called for a time of reckoning. We already knew whose side they were on, despite their proclamations, because we would never remember the pain as anything other than what we still had to swallow. The volcano, the mountain's femur, the roaring sun. In the infinite distance between word and void, silence shot forth as though the earth quaked. This shape in which we write is good for nothing, but form is not, even when it is. The lies spat at us we took, the insults, the embarrassment, the servitude. We sometimes dropped our guard from exhaustion. In the twilight, in cataclysms, in twice as many moments of sleep, they cornered the animals that had nowhere else to go. What has time healed? Not this, turning the lightning bolt. Galaxies collapsed onto themselves, disappearing with dreams, which now I'll turn to desert, gnarled like a cedar. The disbelief that any of this could be real, the staggering fall that it must have been. It took on different shapes, but imagination split destruction in ways that belied captivity. Cruelty was something else entirely. They would call it cruelty when the last cage was opened, the sinister lock was picked, the door swung back and forth. But the disbelief crumbling, and from it something thrown. From the back of the skull, the dark red blood pooled as an open sore. The words cast out as though they indicated the exile from which this subordination occurs. Keep eyes downcast, or approach with your back towards it, saying something about groveling, soul gnawed, truly blind to what appears. Hung by the feet for an indiscriminate amount of time. Lunatic years. It takes this long to discover how to do it, and just this long to lose all hope in it, head dashed on the steps young people run up in great strides on their first day. So very trivial, but the changes were born in time. Far away, a great glacier breaks off and falls like a world falling into the sea. Eyes flooded as rivers are flooded. The pull of the ocean keeps moving. There will come a time when stable earth turns to water or flowing lava, hydra marking the passages that are gone. This procedure that is being played out, thousands of venom sacs, deafening acceptance of the vicious way things must be, will keep on until it can't. Leeches on the tongue. Consider the majesty of starving and disenfranchised mobs. Rusted accoutrements of bones. The night air that will not accept silence. The crushing sound that stands tiptoe to see what is, and disappointed at what is called survival. There are fangs, and there are highest hills among hills. There is nowhere to hide the wounds, and here they are. Torments in a repetitive station of pain. Blow breath in the coldest nights of blue innocent, figures of exhalation pinned to violence in fire pits, a shadow burning, a sitting shadow burning alone, collapsing in death when it becomes too much body. Hopelessness congealed in mind-splitting screams that bloom without purpose, a bird's beautiful warble from a tree of disquietude and courageous chimera. The reclamation of lost years impossible is now returning with blisters on sorrows of sorrows. Fool, say it, idiot born in the worst of all minutes, domination of finance. What rose from the ravenous sunset stood apart, floating in a sky of calico and aluminum oxide, tumult of ingenuity and powder, crepuscular moments of hideous splendor. Simultaneously, defiantly, the lowest concatenation soaring at high noon as if to block out the revolting Janus-faced star. The risk of aleatory demands. Explosion of light against snow's fragile rendering of trees and multitudinous overburdened branches, sun of multicolored unrelenting radiance lasting only this long. The horizon glows with strange light. We had gone so far we couldn't tell where our tracks had come from. We shall see this architecture collapse, not on its own terms. The parade of integument in blasted landscapes of anonymity. The crack came as crisis shooting everywhere, across great distances of migratory birds. It came down to ruin just off the shore, just behind the horizon, ruin that will hit us harshly, even as they will be hit. It shall fall like a vessel on high seas, sinking to depths beyond light. This is fate they could have confidence in, connoisseurs of their own end. But no fate is totality. A cold day and an even colder rupture, far too difficult to hold in the mind even now. Whose voice sang about that stentor, that everyone listening was driven mad. Confidence in medievalism that doesn't exist. Fantasy about scholarship that is a vicious lie. Shock that all there is left is to go into the elements with oceanic corneas, dark cormorant. V for dying in flames before we die. Putrefying fall anew. Thank you.
Perfect. Hi. It's very nice to be with all of you tonight. This first poem is called My Hand and Cold. Of surgeons putting their knives to erroneous body parts, stories abound. So, can you really blame my neighbor for how, heading into the operation, he wrote across his good knee, not this knee, the death of me. I'm never half so bold. You will feel, the doctor said, my hand and cold. And I thought of the pub quiz question, which 3 countries are entirely inside of other countries? I bought the bound 1,000 names for baby, made 2 lists. 1 if she's born breathing, 1 if not. The second list was longer, so much that I might call her. If she were never to bear the name, never to turn to it, suffer shaming, mull its range and implications, blame it, change it, move away to San Marino, Vatican City, Lesotho. Hard child. So I had 2 lists of names for a girl. So what? The president's allowed to have 2 speeches in case the hostage comes home in a bag. The geese in the metro park don't want for breadcrumbs, despite the signs proclaiming the land provides them all they need. I was a hard child, by which I mean I was callous from the start. Even now, were I to find myself after a grand disease or blast among the pasty scattering of survivors, there is not one human tradition I would choose to carry forward. Not marking feast days, not assembling roadside shrines, not marrying up, not researching the colloquialism Staten Island divorce, not representing paste pearls as the real things, not recounting how the advent of photography altered painting and soured us on the acrylic portrait and thrust us toward the abstract, sent us seeking to capture in oil that which film would never be wasted on, umbrella stands, unlovely grates, assorted drains, body casts. I typically hate discussing the past and treasure the option, rarer and rarer, to turn from it, as when Kay's twins were born and one of them nearly died. I don't even remember which. That's how much they got better. Absence, that which never stops appearing. A sea-bound creature once believed to be a single body is actually 1,000 small fish stuck together and sucking. You will never hear me disparage this arrangement. Being myself composed in haste and subject to uncoupling, I too am put together to come apart. A bird screams out my window, like an alarm I have set to notify me when a bird is there. I cannot say what everyone means when they emphasize that the faulty ring on the Challenger cost $900 only. I never wanted to be an astronaut. Never asked for any stretch of sky to die in. I'd rather go here, in the beachhead's gristle or tucked on a tunnel vent. I just haven't done it yet. And I know I frustrate God, who built me for endings and never says anything but, "You had one job!" This poem is called, What Will She Go As? It was not lost on anyone that the baby was due to be born near Halloween. What will she go as? We made a list of iconic infants. Moses in the rushes, Manger Jesus, baby Jessica, slipped down a well in '87 and rescued on live TV. Some people credit the Gulf War scud with commencing the age of cable news, but it was baby Jessica, no contest. Even so, I prefer the Lindbergh baby. Both parents could dress as Lindbergh. Matching leather jackets and flap hats with appended glasses, bomber brown. This costume works the best if the baby is nowhere to be found. Teacup this. To my young daughter, I sing the songs my mother sang to me, which is to say, to my young daughter, I sing an eclectic selection of breakup tunes of the 60s and 70s. I should have known you'd bid me farewell. There's a lesson to be learned in this, and I learned it very well. Now I know you're not the only starfish in the sea. If I never hear your name again, it's all the same to me. That does not seem right to sing to a baby. Yet here I am, and here she is, bed-sprawled, unblessed, and so perhaps like the starfish, yes, one creature of more than the world requires, as I am unceasingly reminded by pamphlet mandates, blanket labels, alerts to lay her always up. It's awful to be a person. That's why from my lovers I've always demanded to know what kind of a dog I might be were I ever a dog. And don't say teacup this, toy that. Don't pick a dog that must travel all over stuffed in a bag like a filthy magazine. Don't take it lightly when I say, of all the men I've been with, there are only a few I never would allow to hold my child. I consider this a triumph. Hot streak. Actually, it's ridiculous to opine on what kind of a dog I would be were I ever a dog, as I don't contain within me half enough life to power a dog. I would be a dead dog, that's what kind. Or maybe a mere industrial object boasting a low-grade animation, some odd beep or flicker, like a dryer or a bulb. Sure, I could see myself as a bulb, the only one still offering light in an otherwise burnt-out fixture bolted hard to a row house porch. And all those moths with no other place to die, can't they murder themselves on somebody else? Can't they have sent their numbers to the great north where there's only dark and live out their weeks untempted by glare and die when they're made to and trouble no orb? And I will end with the last poem in the book. It's called The Sky. Whatever I care for, someone else loves it more, deserves it more. The doe with her whole mouth crushing the flocks, or the seer who adores my future, whereas I could take it or leave it. I know I'll disappear. It won't be glamorous. It won't be like when the Mona Lisa was stolen and the tourists all lined up to pay their respects at the empty spot on the wall of the Louvre. I've never actually even seen the sky. I've only ever seen effluence, seen wattage. The only night I remember is the dinner of neighbors at which a man I never had met before said, "I don't fear dying. Look at the past. People have been dying forever." And then he stopped and shook his head. "I drank too much," he said. I was almost saying, people have been dying forever and all of them survived. But of course, he made a hard laugh. God, of course they didn't survive. Thanks.
So like I mentioned, there's a brief intermission to embrace one another, pat each other in the back, buy books, steal books, whatever suits your fancy. And there's some drinks remaining in the background, and then we'll reconverge in about 5-6 minutes, maybe a little more. The next set of readers, and then I think we are going to try to go to the protest at the Harvard T Square, should we all wish to do so. Next set of readers is Joshua Bennett, David Blair, Steph Burt, and Lloyd Schwartz. They will read in that order. Please welcome them.
Oh, thanks. Hey, y'all. How y'all doing? Oh, no, I'm socially awkward, and I grew up in a Baptist church. I need a little bit more. How's everybody doing? You guys okay? All right, cool. Nice. So this first poem is about, well, first I just want to thank everyone that's touched, not the stage, but this beautiful little circle already. It's an honor to share the space. So this is Barber's song, and it's from my barber, Eli, but also the barbershop is the first space where a lot of the boys and men in my life learn to touch each other and to think about beauty. Barber song. Postmodern blackness blacksmith, straight razor reshaping self-esteem. You dream in geometries unreachable by any other means. Speak in entire phrases abandon standard American etymology. Hence, you liberate waves from the sea, cornrows from the cornfield, reclaim fade, so I now hear the word and imagine only abundance. Caesar never meant anything to me, but a cut so close you could see the shimmer of a man's thinking. You are how we first learned to bend language built to unmake us, accept implausible risk. Some much older man, shaver in hand like a baton full of wasp gossip, asking with the grain or against, and the question feels damn near existential, given this is the only place we can live in such thoughtless proximity to another person's open hands, be held by the face, ask outright to be made glamorous, shaped by your polymathic brilliance. You bi-weekly psychoanalyst, first stop before funeral, before wedding and block party alike. You soothsayer, cooing children to calm as they sit in the chair for the first time, as still a storm as one might reasonably expect. You ethicist, defending hairlines at all cost, your vigilance keeping online and otherwise slander at bay. Philosopher king, thesaurus in the drawer, dominoes and scotch and barbasol adorning your countertop, right above the chorus line of clippers swaying to the clamor of checkmates and offhand insults now filling the shop, each moving as if the unfettered locks of some great metal monster, some faraway watcher, and you, guardian of it all, clean as a pope. So this next poem's about being single in New York City during the summertime. And I was at this party called Grits and Biscuits where they only play sort of Southern hip hop music. And this is one of the first years they held that party outside. And one of my favorite MCs as a child, Trina, runs out. And it's this incredible kind of a radical feminist moment. She says, all the ladies in here, if you got your own money and you don't need no man, make some noise. And it was just hundreds of people making noise. And so it was a rather powerful moment of self-accounting for me. So this is plural. And the epigraph is from my favorite contemporary bluesman, Future. And the epigraph is, you know I ain't scared to lose you. Plural. In the name of solidarity, I have given myself over to the particular fixations of my age. Ducking sleep, day drinking with my internet friends, 3 or 4 Instagram self-portraits on the downtown A, left arm angled high enough to catch collarbone. I'm learning how to participate in the world. Why, just last week, I said hello to a woman wearing a dress made of smoke, spilling Stella over both her hands in a charming sort of way, as Trina offered a theory of radical black self-determination in the background, each line giving fresh velocity to the room. And yes, I do of course mean that Trina, whose unfettered praise of the shaking of the booty has always been to my mind a kind of talisman. Laic prayer, lending valor to the bashful. And now the woman in white is talking to me about the history of Liberia and her favorite podcast, how good it feels to see this many people dancing in a city best known for its casual indifference, the impossible farness between a mass of buddies flush as paper sheaves on the bus ride home, 6 to an apartment built for one, poverty and proximity like 2 bladed halves of the same long equation. She types her number into my right palm and the boys go wild. stain the floor with handfuls of hyacinth petals they cast as if aspiration into the soft black air. I'm pretty good at not loving anything enough to fear its ruin. The cruel speed of our guaranteed obsolescence suits me. This way, I get to be at least one of my favorite versions of myself every other week. Brooding philosopher, race man, public apology connoisseur. Without the pressure of your seeing where I keep the parts, I know you would one day wish I tucked away or else killed somewhere private so you didn't have to smell the fire. And all I can think of these days as I stare across the table, past the drinks with beautiful names, is how my friend Ibrahim used to say, "I'm not single, I'm plural." And we all laughed like we understood. All right, only one more poem about dating. It's not really about dating. It's about my first time, I guess, and it's called The Open, and it's one of those keyword poems in my book where I'm trying to play with both like standard American English definitions of words, but also sort of Black vernacular. So this is The Open, and Rilke's in here just because he appears sometimes. The Open. To be sure, there is a certain promiscuous relation between what Rilke calls, in his 8th and greatest elegy, the open, and what I meant in 12th grade when I dialed Tiana's digits into my aquamarine Sprint flip phone, said, "You free this Wednesday? I got the open," which was shorthand, of course, for open crib or open house, without the academic associations that attend the latter phrase. In Rilke's mouth, the term connotes a way of seeing the world as a blurring of body and shape, no discernible split between the water and its trout like broad swords soft to the touch, lending their silver speed to the landscape. What I mean to say, I have spent years yearning to be so close to the body of another, my mind might pass like mist from me, an albatross I can shed without penance or pain. Tiana leaves for the 64 bus eventually, and I am only a boy alone in his childhood bed, watching the hours improve. At school the next day, my friends adorn me in their singular brutality, claim Tiana has me open, outlined in marigolds, my body luminous, my body barely discernible, as if I had gazed upon the edge of the known world with all my eyes, and yet lived. So a couple more. I'll read this poem about my best friend. Because he's a barber, but also because he's awesome. So this is Still Life with First Best Friend. After Jericho Brown. Danny in the scrum and his hands are meadowlarks, their fulvous ascent. Danny after the fact. Danny listening to you weep, quiet as this umpteenth L must be kept. Danny does what all best friends who growth spurt first must do. Danny defends. Danny deflects classroom heat, the jokes that land like lash and linger. Danny suspended like twice. Danny can't safeguard in absentia. Danny talks about his daddy, same way you do yours when yours goes phantom. Danny ethics. Danny don't go missing. Danny forged in flame. Danny igneous. Danny obsidian. Danny covert nerd on Black Ops mission, so Danny magic cards. Danny Charizard. Danny still blacker than you, depending on that day's definition. Danny Bigger Thomas and Big Bird and Big Pun all in the same bookcase. Danny all-inclusive literary tradition. Danny claims your block. It's very bricks as kin. You tell him duty is a dead idea. Danny won't listen. Danny principles. Early 20s, you talk tough and Danny gets defensive like, you do school, Jay. Someone starts problems out here, you call me. That's my business. Danny stabbed twice and shot once and still smooth as a piston. Danny invincible. Danny illegible. Danny family. Nobody else checks in on Dad when you forget to miss him. All right. What time is it? Oh, we're doing all right. Okay, so two more. So it's my boy Jarvis's birthday, and we gotta go kick it. And I want to hear the other readers too, but we gotta turn up a little bit. Okay, so this is X, like the letter. I told you no more dating poems, so. All right, X. As you are both Malcolm's shadow and the black unknown he died defending, I praise your untold potential, the possible worlds you hold within your body's bladed frame. I love how you stand in exultation, arms raised to welcome the rain, the bolt, whatever drops from the sky, slick shelf without warning, as all plagues do, and miracles too, and bombs that fall from planes which hold men with eyes aimed through long glass tubes, tubes that make a civilian's life look small, small enough to smoke. X marks the crosshairs, and the home and explosion turns to blur. X marks the box on the form that bought the bombs, paid the trigger man, sent the senator's son off to school without a drop of blood to temper his smile, stained leather boots, mar the occasion. X, every algorithm's heartbeat, how any and all adjacent quantities bloom. A kiss, how a signature knows where to begin its looping dance. Two hands balled into fists, crossed at the wrist, repping the borough that gave us b-boys. The Yankees, my mother's left hook, swift enough to knock any living thing off its feet, like a cartoon villain bested by banana peel or spilled oil, his eyes, now two black X's, denoting absence. The wrong answer on a test. How my great-great-grandfather, who could not read, signed his name, as if an homage to his own opacity, as if to say, I contain the unthinkable, or I abstain. It's like Jenga. Don't want the rest of them to fall. Okay, so this is my last poem. And what is this poem about? I'll give you a little bit of a backstory. So this is interesting. Black History Month technically just ended, but for me it's like Black Infinity Month, and I teach African American studies, so I don't care. So maybe 2 years ago, The Guardian had this long form article on Do-Rag History Week. So for those of you who don't know, Do-Rag History Week is a inside joke with several users of what is popularly known as Black Twitter, right? So every so often people will just post pictures of like Moses with a do-rag. It's like, it's funny, right? The people at The Guardian did not know this. And so they actually sent someone to write a long form article where they interviewed members of Black Twitter, whatever that means. It's a website. And so, yeah, everyone kind of played along with it as if this was some long held cultural artifact. And so this, my last poem will be about that. It's called Ode to the Do-Rag, and it's Ode, O-W-E-D, because these are poems of repair, often to objects I was raised to be ashamed of. My family was not middle class, but they were middle class aspirational, which meant I couldn't wear a do-rag outside the house, but I stole away with one and would put it on the bus. So this is for those moments. Shout out to Yonkers, New York, by the way. Ode to the do-rag. Oh, and it's spelled D-U-R-A-G in the title. That's important. Ode to the do-rag, which I spell that way because that's the way it was spelled on all the clear plastic packets I grew up buying for no more than $2, $2.50 max, unless I was at Duane Reade or some likewise corporatized venue. But who buys the majority of their do-rags at Duane Reade anyway? Who would actually wage war on the do-rag's good name by spelling it D-E-W-R-A-G, as I recently read some sad lost souls do in an article in The Guardian? This isn't botany. This isn't a device one might use to attend to the suburban garden and its unremarkable flora, drying freshly damp wisteria with black silk or the much more common nylon rayon cotton blend. I could see D-O-R-A-G. That works for me. One could argue this version makes more sense even than the spelling I am accustomed to, reflective as it is of nothing other than itself. I've never heard the term do used in a sentence by anyone other than a long-lost colleague at Princeton who once reached wide-eyed for my high-top fade before a swift rebuke, marked by my striking his wrist as if some large though distinctly non-lethal mosquito, surely a top 6 proudest moment of anti-colonial choreography I have dared call mine in this odd improbable life I hold to my chest like a weapon. I know. This wasn't supposed to be about them. You make me inordinately beautiful. Let's talk about that. Or how I'm 12 years old, and the cape of a white do-rag billows from beneath my Marlin's cap like a sham poltergeist. Flight and failure contained within a single body, worthy core of any early 2000s era New York rapper's coat of arms. I was lying before. Once, while we sat, quiet as mourners on the front porch, my father spat, "That's a nice do you have there," eyeing the soft mess of corkscrew darkness atop his second youngest son's aging face. No sign of the good hair he praised for years to family and co-workers alike. Alas, old friend, you somehow make me even more opaque. Make me mystery, criminal, dope boy by the corner of Broadway and 127th, compelling respectable people to reach for smartphones, call for backup, smooth, adjustable shadow. Like policy or fire, you blacken everything you touch. Thank you.
That was great. So I'm going to read a new poem, and some from the 2 books, and another new poem. This is called A Drumlin Mansion in Ipswich for Stuart Deschelle. If you want to talk about mansions on the hills, I am here poking around the grounds with a strange mansion, with black-tailed hawks shrieking high-pitched and dive-bombing each other in a hawk fight. Up from the drumlin, with the marsh to the west and the ocean to the east, beaches to the south. The old mansion's rolling green alleyway ends cliffside, where the Ipswich River enters the ocean, the low ocean striped for a long while with sandbar tans. The air snaps like the spring of a velvet-lined case, eyeglasses, and an oak desk. The millionaire plumber kings of Chicago built this up summer imperialist, their last name on each piss pot and jazz-age sink, as if I tacked my shelves with apartment poetry, late and gilded, also intending a line of myth, some showtime. Each god stands in a cellophane statue tent against the off-season, the reflecting pools dry and the Baroque bas-relief detail heads getting lost above the windows in the pebbling wind. The carriage road winds up past the rose gardens, collapsing columns, the cistern broken with brown moss cracks. I am holding somebody's crystal butane flute too. Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. Cheers, as if we knew. Taking the higher perches feels principled, eccentric, stupid, and national as ham. Down the narrow beach, the ocean cuts, standing stones with the foam below and smithy shells, summer's bits. On reading 2 plays and several short stories by Anton Chekhov during Christmas vacation, if there's a god of friendship, it would be a strange god, more like Anton Chekhov than curly winos or winged shoes. Naturally, if she seems to be Venus, we want more than friendship, and if Minerva takes charge, there is crap and feathers, a cello, and a grated well. But the Russian master of intellectuals bellyaching in the void of summer and boring out-of-the-way places could have devised my dearest buddies, not just the writers and poets, but lawyers, prep school teachers, and of course doctors somewhat, caused me to hear them say the most acutely crazy psychological things, make the strangest connections, either to confess the weirdest kinks or to make the most off-color confessions with no chance of absolution except my laugh at working for the landed rich. That would be dying, brilliant, civic, hard to impress Chekhov. I think one of the most archetypal kind of situations is to be like working somewhere and people start getting fired or laid off. So this is from my friend Tanya Larkin, Vulcanists and Neptunists. And the Lord said 86 gazpacho, and the waiters in blue Oxford cloth shirts sweated through their armpits on the patio, and they heard. So I have all of this schist and massif to deal with in the tomato conspiracy. The sharp day layoffs are announced. A few drops of water while the sun shines down, and it's hard to survive the incorporate with all the worry, sadness, and gratitude. The verbena are sinking. The marigolds should be pinched to release the black eyelashes. The Rose of Sharon has a jelly mouth like a kid eating donuts after folk mass. It's a white poodle eating a rat. It's a marionette named Madam under a turban. There's a network of veins, nerves, and straw where there was potted nasturtium. Dental hygienists who misbehave come back as the number crunchers who remove salaried plaque. The 86ers going deep to scorch or freeze. It's 9 years' work. All right. Here's a Somerville poem. A St. Patrick's Day tan. Asphalt down to archaic brick roadbed. The Lenten heat has our neighbor from the Azores out with his spade. Metal into soil against stone after stone. Gardening or cleaning rocks. The sun, that Dutch oven, sun-colored, unnatural brightness, seems full of shanks. 3 playground girls share a spinning wheel attached to bright chains engineered for safety. Their squealing joy comes near you and is going far away, and then sound coming near you. If I were 2 cataracts on my stoop, I would enjoy the approach and retreat, the periodic elements of shampoo. Sailboats on the river, billboards, I'll stay alert, sopressata, jelly beans, South American candy bars, even priced out, so go ahead, push red states down the delta and into the tornado belt. I couldn't tell you what I really think about nature and change, but I will hold the bottom of your silk undershirt while you pull off your thin sweater. This is a really weird movie called Blonde Venus where Marlene Dietrich enters into a nightclub dressed as a gorilla and then takes off her gorilla suit in a striptease, and she has this huge blonde afro on, and she sings a song called Hot Voodoo. And I had a dream of one night. It was actually kind of a happy dream, so I'm thinking like, all right, so against my own feelings about that issue. As one putting the phonograph needle back one song after finding a coveted recording, most of the country is not hung up on Rome as we are, a couple of yard pagans. That was a wonderful smile under that big blonde Venus afro wig that you stole from Marlene Dietrich to shine at me in a dream as reassuring as a rainbow up near the lip of the maelstrom. There's gladness at the heart of being a person, most of the time impervious, yet visible to our speculation as sorrow eats cake at happy weddings. In the universal masquerades, mostly we are barely initiates into these or any other mysteries, even the most blissful and fortunate bodies good as short-term rentals. And so there are these gas stations ablaze at night where the longer you drive, the more you have to get back home. In the middle of the night, it snowed. In the middle of the night, it snowed. There was moisture in the air all winter that never got cold. In the middle of the air, there was a crossing guard in a fluorescent green coat, double wide. There was a boulder with a turnip on top of it, under miles of cloud. There was a tattooed shop in the foggy glow, seagulls in the parking lot, a whole lot of cotton wadding. If you would only remove your surgical mask, I could see that kisser. This is a Somerville poem, too. Free variation on Saturday night in the village. Blinds up on the clarity and social club drinkers of mythos and black coffee and watchers of white marble soccer legs. Sometimes the lovers look at each other and two words pop into their basic heads. Leon Spinks, because his teeth. It's Friday. Sometimes from a passing car, Black Dog or the Steve Miller Band on the way to luau night at the church gym, a K-8 chicken dance, Mariologist all around, down the broken step, past the third grade teacher in his actual neck brace. In the room behind the pizza ovens and the white wooden walk-in cooler, the busboy feeds loaf after quartered loaf of mozzarella to the cheese grinder, bin after bin of cheese in the pure dairy air of love. Down on the avenue, the bands are unloading their black-cased amps and instruments from the open vans in the sunlight of evening that begins the night. Empty tables in the bar, trees over the alley in green twilight. No railings on a wooden flight of steps to the back apartment on the second floor, overlooking garages under catalpa tree flowers to go up that way and then down. All this pushes an immense longing. Poem about heaven. I'm from a family, where I'm the youngest of five, and my sisters made sure that I was really good at doing impressions of people in the family, particularly at wakes of the deceased. Yeah. It's not really a funny poem, but there's a line in it that's what it's about. Poem about heaven. I'm such an impressionist. My legs get cold. My arms get cold. Weird thinking of my mom dying in my old bedroom. Now the den. And kneeling is weird. The Northern Lights, weird. Arcade lights. Wildwood, New Jersey, weird. Inside my eyelids. But I'm not thinking of Poe again and the dance of colors. I'm thinking of the hierarchy that my mind wants heaven to be. Why else these figures from a deck of cards, kings and queens kneeling down to Jesus in the neon shoreline, tunnel of love, of horrors, boardwalk attractions. Only these are blissful religious figures. They kneel because they are weak in the knees. That feeling you get when somebody is wearing a nightdress by the freezer section in the supermarket. You will drop through the bunting thrown up on either side of your wraparound porch. I feel in love with a heart that I picture blue and red, pumping an old planetarium light show. I go back downstairs to a house full of the voices of all my family, my whole life. Sure, we are going there. Okay, and this will be the last poem I read. This new poem. One of the things I really like about Christina is how much she loves Thoreau and Walden. So here's a poem set partially at Walden. Concord River, and it's just about there's like a week or two in June and like a week or two in August where I watch my daughter and other people's kids because I'm a teacher, so like I don't usually do it, and I work at home and stuff like that. So I end up watching. So it's fun. So this is what this is about. Concord River and Walden Pond. Parents scramble the last week before school starts up again at the pond. Parking lot's full. Come on back again at 3. for transcendental parenting. The heron with was a big pale hunt down on the bend of the river. Then I got into a fight with 2 new 4th graders right on the bridge, one of them Astrid. The Minutemen stopped the redcoats. Not a professor, a man with a butterfly net sang us the Concord hymn. This is one flaky state. I was the one who needed more sunblock, a pith helmet. We made up and got back to the pond, towels up on the wall. Had to read Hopkins, blah, blah. I was being no fun. Going back to school, too. There were damp teenagers down the wall. 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. Skinny suburbanites with strange belly buttons. Distraction can be a good parent, maybe. At least kids know you have interests. Everybody likes to be the only one with alibi jobs. And the only other pleasure contradicts that, company. The shorter one, the one with shorter hair, liked his small nipple self too. And so, not getting the picture, stroking both of them, standing up and actually pushing her breasts together to get the water out of her bathing suit top. Hardy was feeling terrible, at least dactylic, taking the long views and taking carriages in his head as his wife, while I almost said, "Kid, that's something I never saw before. Good luck." Then Astrid ran up and pounded her water bottle. Then Squeegee took her camera out with a ridiculous telephoto lens and started taking photos of her 2 friends eating grapes. 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds, my 10-year-old. What goes on? Multiple idols? Then these 2 sun-raisin and strong Concord ladies with accents from lawnmowers with deviated septum came swimming from the boaty middle of the pond, way out like Katharine Hepburn swimming to Dover from France. The moms, my peers, who do things better, who brought them here every free summer day since forever. You have 30 minutes to do something. That is enough time for us to walk around the pond if we go fast. Then the shoeless 3 raced off for the woods. Thank you so much.
I guess I'm up. Yeah. Thank you all for coming. Thanks to Christina and Mary and everybody else who set this up, and to the other 7 poets, including Lloyd Schwartz, who we haven't heard from yet. There's so much work went into organizing this, and the one thing I never got was how many minutes I'm supposed to read for? Is it what, like, what? It's the one thing I missed. It's the most important thing. It's like 12 or 13, is that right? Ish. Yeah, the other thing I'm trying to figure out, and I didn't want to distract anybody by looking it up, the name of the rhetorical figure for saying you're not going to do something and while you're doing it, like I come to bury Caesar not to praise him. Remember what that's called, anyone?
Lying.
Yeah, that's a little broader. That's a little broader than what I'm looking for. This is a longer Latinate term. Nobody? Nobody? We'll look it up later. In any case, I'm not going to tell you to be sure to buy the books that are for sale. And I'm not going to do that because I don't have anything in there. But I'm very, very happy to see them. And so I'm not going to encourage you or remind you to take a look at them after Lloyd is done. And I think they have to buy them from the poets, right? Yeah. There's not a central cash box. Yeah, pick them up. The ones that have been out for a bit, like David's new book, All About Somerville, right? Yeah. That one's there, Arsenal, yeah. Yeah, and I think this is your first chance anywhere to buy Hard Child, is that right?
It is.
Wow. You can be literally the first person to pay money for Natalie's new book. I stand corrected. Yeah.
What's the rhetorical phrase for that?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I'm Steph or Stephanie or Steven. The books all say Steven. And I'm going to read some new things and some things from the book that's out this fall. And I guess they speak to what's been going on around us. Yeah. Wings. It's got an epigraph, Gertrude Stein's second most famous tagline, "Pigeons on the grass, alas." Wings. By the wrought iron roots of the wrought iron fence, at the gravel and pebble-lined edge of our town's only 6-way intersection's pocket park, the pigeons arriving from who knows where still land, stay and fight for each crumb, says every beak. Their fierce defense, their almost confident peak. Could it, a student asks, be alas in Spanish rather than English alas? If I had wings to fly away, I'd need another language, say, of pigeons' iridescent repetitions of their miniature clash, their whistles and contestant brass, their flutter and bothersome righteous claims to belong, having come from elsewhere like the grass. Grass really is an immigrant, by the way. The grass that's all over our lawns, that was brought here too. I guess you're not an immigrant if someone else brought you here. That grass was brought here, and now it belongs. Kites. You know, I'm not going to read that one yet. It's too jarring. The transition's too jarring. Yeah, so the new book is called Advice from the Lights. It's out this fall. And it's got a bunch of gender nonconforming childhood stuff at the beginning and then a bunch of poems at the end that are in very short lines that are recent that all have advice in the title. And Rock Creek Park, as some of you know, is the giant park in the middle of Washington, D.C., near where I grew up. Advice from Rock Creek Park. What will survive us has already begun. Oak galls, 2 termites' curious, self-perpetuating bodies, letting the light through the gaps. They lay out their allegiances under the roots of an overturned tree. Almost always better to build than to wreck. You can build in a wreck. Under the roots of an overturned tree. Consider the martin that hefts herself over traffic cones. Consider her shadow, misaligned over parking lot cement. Saran wrap scrap in her beak. Nothing lasts forever. Not even the future we want. The president has never owned the rain. Glad you like it. Yeah. For some reason, after November 8th, everything that I wrote suddenly had really short lines. I don't know if that happened to anybody else. So I'm a lot of things, right? I'm a teacher and a critic and a writer and a former record collector and a current obscure rock fan, and I'm also Jewish, and I've written about 2 Jewish American poems ever so far. This is one of them. Fuzzy Golem Doll with 6-inch keychain. And everything in it is in a real synagogue that you can go visit in Prague. It's called the Alt-Neue Synagogue, which means the Old New Synagogue, because there were even older synagogues. And this one is distinct from the other old synagogues in the Joseph something, the Jewish quarter in Prague, because it's still a house of worship. People still conduct services there, and the other ones are just museums or tourist sites. Fuzzy Golem Doll with 6-inch keychain. That's important. Protector of children from boredom, of parents from fear of not bringing anything halfway appropriate back. I want to be chosen. I have seen week after week cliques of visitors check my price tag. I keep trying to count them. I keep losing track. My grandfather and namesake lived for truth, or a word that meant truth, and was killed by the word for death, and brought to life by a collective wish for a dispassionate, lowbrow hero with feet of clay. Whatever made him famous, he did with his hands. He may or may not have been able to do a good deed, to interpret as well as follow simple commands. Once I belong to you, you can take me downstairs. A queue of high stains on the wainscot serves to remember the existential threat of 2002, when the quarter flooded and the water entered. Each wooden seat bears a brass nameplate. In the one center of the sunken, holy rectilinear area, a cast iron cage awaits cantillation and prayer. What you inherit depends, not least, on what you can make. In my own recessed and featureless interior, I hold, along with a spell or scroll for strength, a rabbinical saying: carry these two truths in your back pocket and take them out as occasion demands. On the one side, I am dust and ashes. On the other, the world was created for my sake. A couple more? Yeah, okay. Don't want to eat Lloyd's time. This is another slightly longer one I wasn't going to read, but Conquered Him came up. So I've got to do something with that. I'm going to try to read it off my phone, which, if I fail, I fail. It's also I've been, for a lot of reasons, I've been trying to think about whiteness, right, which is a category. When you write about other people's poetry for a long time, and you read a lot of contemporary poetry criticism, you think, you sort of have to think, I hope we all think about marked and unmarked identity, right? Right? Whiteness isn't marked. Poets who are white aren't expected to write about whiteness in the way that poets, in general, there are exceptions, but in general. And so it's something that sort of learning what white privilege is and how you can write about it without sounding ridiculous is something that I think a lot of us have had to do later in our careers, if we have careers. And I sort of started this poem by trying to do that. And it turned out to be about a lot of things as well, including Emerson and Conquered Him and the situation that we're in. And it was in a really amazing Boston Review pamphlet that came out last month of poems about resistance and poems about how to handle the situation we're in. With Peter Gizzi and Juan Felipe Herrera and all kinds of good stuff. Anyway, I'll do this one and then a short one. Conquered Grapes. Conquered Grapes. What would it be like to belong entirely in your own body, or in your own country, or at your own address? It might be like these unself-conscious, tangled, each one over the next one, conquered grapes. Hooked, as in hook and eye, on the chain-link fence between our driveway and the next. The populous dewy clusters hang as if lashed to so many minuscule masts, or threaded and caught in the stems of their earnest commensals and competitors. Each skin gives its possessor neither shelter nor camouflage, only a violet luster that catches the eye. For such a wild varietal to thrive, let alone spread, it has to be consumed. The state seal of Connecticut, designed in 1639, depicts 3 poles, each supporting a hefty cluster of purplish discs over Latin that means who transplants sustains. on each a serpentine red line, a thickening vine, though elsewhere it could read as a caducus or a dollar sign, connects the grapes it does not quite entwine. When the first Europeans to try Concord grapes made wine, they found it repellently sweet, as if a less than competent goblin or vintner had meant to intoxicate children. So they drank their barrel ciders and mashed these into jam. 200 years later, Ralph Waldo Emerson thanked embattled farmers for firing the grape-shized shot heard round the world. Not many years or compromises afterward, Julia Ward Howe predicted the trampling out of vintage, if not the scavenger mutilated or putrefying corpses of Shiloh and Andersonville, who died to make men free. Unpicked, the grapes have a musky or dusky hue, especially at dusk, although their promise of easy separation from the stem is not to be trusted. Fingered, they often fall off and into the thicket they made, as if once ripe they would rather wither than give pleasure to us who have taken more than our share. The English romantics preferred, when they were moved to speak of revolution, a series of metaphors about dawn. The motion sensor operated lights that hang and sometimes swing like tennis rackets from the corners of our eaves over the fence are always darkest just before they get turned on. I should say, if you want, that poem has a secret model, which is the poetry of Robin Schiff. Who also thinks about sort of privilege and making the unmarked marked and domesticity and being middle class and getting more than you deserve. And if you haven't read Robin's new book, A Woman of Property, please read it. But, read those books there first. One more? Two more? One more? One more. To the naked mole rats at the National Zoo. You guys know what naked mole rats look like? Yeah, they're kind of amazing. There's a children's book called Naked Mole Rat Gets Dressed, which is not a bad book. To the naked mole rats at the National Zoo. Buck-toothed and semi-transparent, pretty to no one, butt of a joke and protagonist of a cartoon, you make ridicule seem inescapable, not at home anywhere sunlight might penetrate the circuitous air, or else at home only on paper, a mock-up of a colony on the moon. What with the light fixture's shadows and the inhale, exhale, inhale, water vapor, your tunnels look almost opaque. Some unambitious version of heaven or mild first level of hell. Alexander Pope, with his grotto and chronic pain, might have had a lot to say about your lot. So eager to immure one another, yet always on view to the grade schoolers whose eyes below woven caps and sun hats make a meal of you. They could see you as unfinished or as a mistake. One compared you to severed toes. Another called all of you skin tubes, which seems apropos if rude. It describes us all, though your motives are pure, your will therefore harder to break. Thanks so much.
Wow, what an evening. Christina, thank you for bringing this multiplicity of wonderful voices together. It's fantastic. I had a really nice surprise just the other day which is getting a copy in the mail of my new book, which I have been waiting for 3 years from the day I submitted the manuscript. So I knew it was coming out, but it actually exists. It's the only copy I've actually seen. But so I'm going to start with the title poem. Little Kisses. My mother is mad at the sun. She hates the daylight. One more new day. In a nursing home, stuck in a wheelchair, she thinks she's been abandoned. In the background, a woman's nonstop wail. My mother can barely hear me on the phone. She doesn't know she's speaking to her son. I have to tell her she's speaking to her son. Oh, then I'm not alone. I have a son. Please don't forget that. How could I forget that? And you, who are you? Are we related? Of course. Are you my father? Don't you remember your father? Are you my brother? You're my mother. I'm your mother? Of course. Was I a good mother? You are a wonderful mother. I'm glad you're my son. What's your name? You don't remember? I can't think of it. I'm all mixed up. Are we related? You're my mother. Did I ask you that before? Yes. Are you angry? Why should I be angry? Because I'm so stupid. What lovely flowers, the nurse says. Did your son bring them? Who? Your son. Isn't this your son? He's my friend. I can't stop myself. Where is your son? Where's my son? What do you mean? Where is your son now? He's dead. Mrs. Schwartz, your son is on the phone. My son? Yes, say hello. Hello. Hello, how are you feeling? Much better, thank you. Why did you call? I call you every day. Forgive me, darling. I didn't remember. Well, hello. How did you know I was here? This is my son, isn't that right? You're my son, aren't you? You came out of my body. I'm your mother. Isn't that right? Isn't he handsome, even if he has a beard? I'm your mother. I'd love you no matter what you look like. Wouldn't I? Give me a little kiss, will ya, huh? What are you gonna miss, will ya, huh? Gosh, oh gee, why do you refuse? I can't see what you're gonna lose. So give me a little kiss, will ya, huh? And I'll give it right back to you. See, I know all the words. I probably won't remember them tomorrow. Thank you, Natalie, for singing before I had to. So because there is music in that poem, and I've spent a very large part of my life in and responding to the world of music. All the other poems I'm going to read have something to do with music. This is called The Conductor. breezing easily between exotic chinoiserie and hometown hoedown, whisking lightly between woodwind delicacy and jazzy trombone, he must have the widest and oddest repertoire of gestures, which allows him a stylistic and dynamic range unusual even among today's most highly regarded conductors. The way he slipped from the grandiose opening adagio maestoso to the suddenly jaunty allegretto made me laugh out loud, though his small, complex gesticulations can diminish and even undermine the passages where the melodic lines ought to soar. He's all dippy knees, flappy elbows, and floppy wrists. Not Bernstein's exaggerated self-immolation, but little complicated pantomimes, steering a car down a winding road, patting down a mud pie, robbing eggs from a bird's nest and carrying them carefully away, flinging tinsel on a Christmas tree. As a baseball umpire, he could declare a runner simultaneously safe and out at home plate. He threw himself into the music and very nearly into the first violin section with the kind of reckless abandon that comes only with complete confidence and authority. Not so much confidence in himself and authority over his players, but confidence in his players and authority over his material. These glittering performances, more dazzle than warmth, more brilliance than magic, sophistication without innocence. Does the music ever hold surprises even for himself? Or terrors? How much would we love him if it did? This is another poem about a concert. It's an old poem, and it actually takes place at Harvard. And the two teachers I refer to in this description are actually Elizabeth Bishop and Robert Lowell. And this poem is about someone who was a student of both of theirs. It's a true story. Alternative facts. The recital. He sits there staring into the keyboard. Baggy, rented tucks, sagging shoulders, limp hair nearly brushing the keys, hesitating to begin. His eyes glazed as if he'd been up a week on Coca-Cola and pills. A Coke bottle, giant size, half empty at the foot of the piano bench. A few music people, secretaries from his lab, the two poets he had studied with, and assorted friends half fill the small hall. The recital is ambitious, demanding, romantic, ecstatic, and jagged modern, sometimes hard to tell apart in his playing. Frustrated by the almost willful refusal of his fingers to deal with all the notes, but riveting, certain that music has to intend, and stopping at nothing to intend something. Encouraging applause. A crooked, self-deprecating bow from the waist. Intermission is a relief. Quote, amazing piano playing for a physicist. Why does he do this to himself? he didn't look happy. What if he decides to play the first half over again? Back inside, the conversational hum drops, then grows. Where is he? Still backstage? Home? Dead? The speculation is amused and dismayed. Messages are sent, assurances returned. 40, 50 minutes, nobody leaves. No one is surprised. Could he have done anything to keep his suffering from the audience? How many in it had already suffered with him his poems, jobs, addictions? Or is this his way of trying? Sheepishly, he reappears and begins, no waiting. His intensity this time controlled by his intentions. What does he have to go through? What process, effort finally allows him to go on? And what defeats it? He'd have a poem accepted by a national magazine using an image drawn from his experiments, only to withdraw it out of fear he'd lose his job. He'd change jobs, move home, and give up practicing, virtually stop writing. Then cancer, springing he was sure from all the pills, making him go through a surgical attempt to prolong his life. He wanted time to straighten himself out, to try to write more poems. He had 3 months. Dead before 40, what brought him distinction besides what already had? His astonishing diversity of unfulfilled talent and the unrewarded diversity of his suffering. I think my favorite song in the classical music repertoire is a song by Debussy that's a setting of a poem by Paul Verlaine called Colloque Sentimental. And this is my attempt at a translation of the Verlaine poem. Sentimental conversation. In an ancient park, isolated and icy, two passing shapes come passing by. Their lips are slack, their eyes dead. It takes effort to make out their words. In the ancient park, isolated, icy, two ghosts trying to call back their past. Do you ever think about our old ecstasy? Why would you want me to remember that? Does your heart still beat faster only at my name? Do you still see my soul in your dreams? No. Oh, those lovely days of happiness, unspeakable, when we seemed joined at the mouth. Possibly. The sky, how blue it was. We had such great hopes. Hope has flown off, wounded through black clouds. Soon they disappeared through the tangled woods, and only night understood their words. That song is not a duet, even though there are two characters in it. But So I'm going to read the next two poems. I'm going to read three more poems, but the next two poems are two more duets, and sort of, and I'm reading them tonight because both of them have been set to music, so I can hear the tunes that they're singing. So this one is from a new setting. It just had its premiere in Hartford by a Boston composer named Scott Wheeler, who is based in Emerson and whose music I am really crazy about, and I love this setting. It's from a kind of cycle, and this is one of my favorite things. It's a sestina, but don't worry. It's I think it's the shortest possible sestina. It's called 6 words. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes, always, never. Never? Yes. Always? No. Sometimes. Maybe never sometimes. Yes, no, always. Always, maybe. No, never, yes. Sometimes, always, yes. Maybe, never. No, sometimes. Never. Always? Maybe. Yes. Yes, no, maybe, sometimes, always, never. And this is another dialogue, and it's a dialogue between my mother and me. And it was set to music by a wonderful composer who was Arab-American composer named Mohammed Fayrouz, who was educated in Boston but is based in New York. He tells his mother what he's working on. I'm writing a poem about you. You are? What's it about? It's the story about your childhood, the horses in the river. The ones that nearly drowned? I saved them. You told it to me just a few weeks ago. I should dig up more of my memories. I wish you would. Like when I lived on the farm and one of the girls fell down the well? Yes. I forget if it was Rose or Pauline. It was a deep well. I remember that story. Have you finished your poem? I'm still working on it. You mean you're correcting it with commas and semicolons? Exactly. When can I see it? As soon as it's finished. Is it an epic? It's not that long. No, I mean all my thoughts, the flashes of what's going through my life, the whole family history, living through the woe, the river and the water. I know. Will it be published? I have to finish it first. It's better to write about real life. That's more important than writing something fanciful. I try to write all my poems about real life. You see, the apple never falls far from the tree. I guess not. You're my apple. There's probably a worm crawling through that apple. Then it's got something sweet to chew on. Well, you're my tree. Yes, I'm your tree. You're an apple. I'm a tree. And the last poem I'm going to read is a little more remotely connected to music than any of the other poems. It's called Jerry Garcia in a Somerville Parking Lot. Past midnight, a man in his late 60s, tall, with long gray hair and a bushy gray, almost white beard, returns to the side street public parking lot where he'd left his car. It's hot and dark, and the lot is unlit. At the far end, he can make out two men smoking, leaning against the car right next to his. Alone and apprehensive, he starts across the lot and soon catches a whiff of what they're smoking. Suddenly, one of them asks, "Want to hear a joke?" Startled, he hesitates, but obliges. "Sure," he says. "What's the joke?" "Okay, what do you call a woman with only one leg?" "I don't know," he plays along. "What do you call a woman with only one leg?" "Eileen." It takes him a second. He almost groans, then begins to laugh. "Want a drag?" the guy asks. He's just a kid. The other one never says a word. No thanks," the man answers. "I can inhale from here." This time, it's the kid who laughs. "Okay, I only asked you because you look like Jerry Garcia. Have a nice night." "You too," the man answers, unlocking his car. "Thanks." And all the way home, he keeps chuckling at lucky escapes, wildly mistaken identities, sweet, dumb jokes, how little it takes to restore his affection for the city. And at least for the moment, gratefully alive, can't stop laughing, or laughing at himself for laughing at his latest temporary reprieve. Thank you.